Hello and welcome to the Happier Life Project podcast. I'm your host, Gabby Sanderson, and today we're diving deep into a topic that affects us all: time management. How we manage our time has a huge impact on our mental health, influencing everything from how productive we feel to how much guilt, stress, or satisfaction we carry throughout the day. Now, if you're anything like me, you know how easy it is to get overwhelmed by to-do lists and the guilt you can carry about any unfinished goals. But what if managing our time and setting goals didn't have to leave us feeling stressed out? How do you set realistic goals without burning out? How can time management strategies help us feel more empowered and less overwhelmed? In this episode, we'll explore how these skills can support our mental health instead of draining it. Risa's work focuses on practical tools to help people stay motivated and reduce their stress. And she's here to share her best tools, tips, and techniques on creating a healthy balance between structure and self-care. Time management isn't just about ticking boxes. It's also about tackling obstacles like procrastination or a lack of motivation and setting achievable goals. In this conversation, Risa will share how she uses music not only to boost focus, but also to help us get through life's more mundane tasks. We also discuss what to do about the morning dread, that heavy feeling some of us experience at the start of the day. And Risa offers some simple motivation hacks to help us stay on track without exhausting ourselves. Whether you're juggling deadlines, striving for a big goal, trying to find calm amidst the chaos, or simply looking to take some pressure off yourself, this episode is for you, my friend. So, ready to find a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Hi, Risa. Nice to meet you.
It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for inviting me to be on the podcast.
Thrilled to have you on the show. I suppose we can call it a show. It is a show.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is a new subject for the podcast. We've not covered this before. Going a bit deeper into your bio, I'm really fascinated how you got to where you are now just because of the kind of story of it. So you started your career as a ballet dancer, studied at the School of American Ballet, and then you went on to become a screenwriter and a playwright. And it was after working in the film industry as a writer, you returned to graduate school and earned a master's in clinical psychology. And then after working for many years in the field, became a licensed psychotherapist, specializing in time management tools and goal setting strategies, which is what we're going to talk about today. I understand going from like the ballet to the screenwriting, because it's storytelling through the body and through the words. But then what made you at this point go, okay, I really, really want to go down a different avenue and dive into mental health?
Yeah. Well, my life has not followed a linear path. I've always gone back to the arts. I've always been an artist at heart. So I feel like I have all this creativity that's always trying to express itself in different ways. I had taken a bunch of psychology classes in college as I was getting my degrees and to become a writer, and really always resonated with it as a way to become a better writer. Like, how do I write better characters? How do I write more realistic dialogue? And I started getting more and more into psychology. And then as I was in my 30s, was navigating a bunch of burnout from working in Hollywood, dealing with a lot of stressed out people, a lot of like high demand jobs, and went to a therapist and started seeing how that was very helpful. And the stuff she would give me to do and the stuff I had learned about at school all just started percolating in my head. And I said, I really want to learn more about this. I think this is a great way to go, like learn more about how the mind works and how I can apply this. And my goal wasn't to stop being a writer, it was to keep being a writer, but
Yeah.
also, go back and learn more about psychology too, with the hopes of helping people. I was
Yeah.
seeing a lot of people in Hollywood and in different artistic careers just reaching such burnout, such levels of anxiety, and just feeling that myself too, and learning more about how I can manage it better myself. So it started from maybe self investigation and exploration, but also wanting to apply it to the arts
Yeah.
and to help other artists too. So
Well,
that's kind of where I began.
I suppose mission accomplished then, because obviously you've gone on to write quite a few books now in this space, and you've got more
Yeah.
in the pipeline, which we'll chat about as well. But like specifically zooming in on time management, like what made you so focused on that area in particular? It was it because you
Yeah.
struggled with it so much?
Well, I've always been a very busy, chronically busy person. That's how I would describe myself. I've always been trying to do two careers at once, or sometimes three, or, a career with a bunch of hobbies. And I'm a mom raising two kids on the side. So
Yeah.
for me, I was always looking for ways like, how do I make this easier on myself? Like, how do I keep track of all my different goals and different passions that I have, and move myself forward without getting completely overwhelmed and shut down?
Mm.
And as I was starting to do my hours as a therapist, we have to do 3,000 hours to train and to get our license here. I was starting to get a lot of anxious clients, a lot of creatives, a lot of people who were very similar. They were very busy and they were trying to navigate really hard careers that had no map, a lot of creative professionals.
Yeah.
And they were all saying the same thing, like, I'm anxious, I'm stressed out, I need help managing my time. I can't keep track of everything I have to do. And I started to find that that was like a strength I had that I didn't know I had. I had gone into therapy to help people with anxiety. And what happened was it started morphing into time management,
Mm.
because that was such a key component of why people were feeling anxious and stressed, was that they didn't feel like they had enough time to do stuff they want to do, and they never
Yeah.
felt done with anything as well.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
guess that's what interested me, and I found that I had these very practical, simple approach to helping people who are overwhelmed break it down into steps and move forward one piece at a time. And over the years, I developed different tools where I could explain that to different types of people
Mm.
in a simple way. And now it's sort of it's what I do. And I think I understand it because I've been there myself, and I know what it's like to feel completely overwhelmed and
Yeah.
shut down, and lost in procrastination and lost in your own avoidance. And you need simple tools and practical tools at that point. Just talking to someone in therapy is a good place to start for people, but it doesn't always help you move forward.
Mm.
So I like traditional therapy, but I always wanted that piece when I went to therapy of, well, I need the next step. Like, I need someone to help me just figure out what the next little step is, and then the step after that,
Mm.
So that's kind of what I provide, is like a different approach at really getting honest with yourself and more practical with the way you're choosing to do things with your time.
Mm. Well, I'd never come across the term chronically busy people before reading the book. And then I was like, obviously, it kind of makes sense, but I think we can all figure out what you mean by that. And I would say that applies to so many people. So I had a couple of questions. My two questions about that were, do you think the problem is more psychological? It's like the overwhelm versus the actual list of priorities. And also, are we just generally taking on too much?
Definitely. I definitely think we are all trying to do too much. And I think a lot of the things we're signing up to do, we don't necessarily have to do. So they've done neuroscience studies where they show a lot of times people are just crunching their own time, in that they're overcommitting to things, and the time they're spending on the things they need to do is often above and beyond what they need to be spending it on. So I think there is this element of we we create some of our own chaos. We have a lot of stuff coming at us these days, a lot of expectations, a lot of, demands on our time, but we also generate a lot of that for ourselves. So sometimes it's about time boundaries and learning what you want to say yes to and what you want to take on versus what you don't really need to say yes to and take on. It goes back to looking at what you value and what you actually want to be spending your time on. So I guess that's a place to start is, we only have so much time and energy. We're limited in the amount of energy we have each week. And if we get very honest with ourselves about that, and you realize you don't have limitless time and energy, and you actually admit that to yourself, then what are you going to choose to do with the actual limited amount of time and energy that you have? And it's a whole mindset shift, really, one where we can learn to take care of ourselves a little more, listen to what our brain and body are telling us. So all throughout the week, we're getting cues from our brain and body. You need to take a break. You need to step away. This is too much for me right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And we're getting these little cues. So I guess a starting point is to just make enough time each day where you're actually slowing down on purpose, checking in with your brain and body. Talk to your brain and body like they're your friends. What's going on? What do you need right now? Listen to the answer and then learn to befriend your brain this way. Like, okay, you need a break? Let's step away. You need to bring the stress down for a second? Let's start to look at that. So that's a big piece of starting to look at how to navigate our time in a healthier way.
Something that I hadn't thought about before reading your book was something that you pointed out about when we're stressed, there's a tendency to underestimate how long a task will take. So how do you think we can become more mindful of setting realistic time expectations, and what strategies?
So one of the main tools I teach people is something called the stress ruler, which is a starting point when somebody comes to work with me in sessions. It's always the first tool I give people. And in classes I teach too. I teach the students to rate their stress, because I find that stress is something we are very vague about. We throw the term around and we're not very nuanced in what we're talking about. So I like people to picture a ruler that goes from 1 to 10. And on 10 is like the most stressed out, the most freaking out with stress that you feel. And 1 would be the lowest level of stress. So when you're feeling mellow or relaxed. Most of us aren't at a 1 or a 10 all the time. We go up and down the scale throughout the day. And each notch feels a little different in our brain and body. So my goal is to get people to feel the difference as stress is rising and those warning signs that your stress is getting to the higher end of the scale. Because once you do that, you can become more aware of what it feels like in your brain and body when you're at a very high level of stress. So basically, stress influences our executive functions. Our executive functions are things like task prioritization, making estimates for time that are accurate, organization, memory, emotional regulation. So when we're feeling stressed out, these executive functions become harder and harder to access. It impairs them. So that's why sometimes when your stress is really high, you can't make a decision on what to do next, or you overestimate how much time something will take or underestimate how much time something will take you to do. Or you just can't even think about what the next step forward is for you. You feel jammed up. People will say, my brain feels jammed up, or I feel frozen or completely flooded. Those are some of the terms people use when they're like a 9 or a 10 on their scale. So I have between a 6 and a 10 is something called the red zone, where I ask people to find the tipping point where after you reach the red zone, it becomes really hard to physically calm yourself down and to calm your brain down. But if you can catch it before you reach that point, let's say it's a 6 or a 7, we can actively do stress reduction tools to bring our stress down 1 notch at a time, and it'll work a lot faster. Because once our brain is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline and stress hormones, they say it can take up to 2 to 3 hours for that to start to subside. So that's why when we're running really high on our stress scale, we're very chronically stressed out, and we're chronically busy and we're in that really high stress state, it's going to take a really long time to bring the stress down one notch at a time. And we have to do it deliberately with intention. Like we have to take breaks where we are actively bringing our stress down. So that's another thing I look at with people as well, is like a lot of us know we're supposed to take breaks and go for a walk or exercise or whatever.
Yeah.
That's great. If you're doing it and your stress is coming down, that's even better.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we're taking a break and our stress isn't coming down, you know?
You call these time buffers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I call them time buffer breaks.
And so in your kind of typical day, for those that maybe might work like office hours, say, like how often do you think we're supposed to take these time buffers?
Okay, so once you get pretty good at noticing when stress is rising, it's not so much how often you're doing them, but are you catching the stress? So when you're feeling like a level 6 or 7, can you step away even for a few minutes and do something to bring the stress down a little? So sometimes that's, get up from the computer, go for a walk, or go drink some water, or let the brain relax a little bit. If you can step outside, if you're working in an office and you can go outside and look around, look at something calming, all these things will help you. And it's a little bit at a time, it's bringing the stress down. So it's how often you need to do it, I guess, is dependent on how high the stress is going and what kind of day you're having. So if you're having a very high intensity, high stress day, you're going to need to take longer breaks, more frequent breaks, or at least when you come home from work, you're going to really have to acknowledge that it was hard. It was a hard day. It was stressful. And now purposely pick things to do where you're bringing your stress down at home. Often what I find people do is they go home from a stressful day and then they just race into errands or chores or cleaning up or picking the kids up or whatever. And there's never a breather of time where they're letting their body and brain really reset, from everything they just went through.
Right. So what about reducing some of, I guess, like the mental clutter in terms of organizing time for better mental health and productivity as well? Let's say, like, have you got any kind of suggestions there? Have you found any specific tools, maybe like apps even, that have been helpful?
So once we learn how to rate our general stress, I have a tool called the task intensity meter, which helps people start to look at organizing their day in different ways. So the task intensity meter asks you to rate tasks ahead that you have to do as low, mid, or high intensity to you. And when I say intensity, what I mean is how much stress is it causing you to do it? So you can use this for anything really, like chores you have to do, work tasks you have to do, anything. My kids sometimes use it for homework they have to do when we're trying to figure out how they should do their homework or what order they should do it in. So you would look at the things ahead of you. For instance, after this, I have a session and then I have another workshop I'm doing, and then I'm going to go eat lunch, right? So maybe the session is mid intensity for me today, and the workshop I have to lead is high intensity because I have to be very prepared and have to have all my notes together. So my stress will probably go up a lot for that one. And then lunch should be low intensity. My goal when I look at my day is to acknowledge that I can really only handle a couple high intensity things per day. Yeah. I mean, some days, obviously, I can't control it. So there will be some days like I'm looking ahead, and Thursday is a very high intensity day for me. I have a few high level things that I can't control that are just in a row. If I can control it, though, I will space them out. I won't put them all on one day. And I'll give myself enough breathing time buffer break in between each high intensity thing I need to do. So for instance, when I do this workshop today, I know that after that, I'm probably going to be pretty fried mentally. I should not try to take on something that is super hard for me to do after. So during that lunch I have after, I'm going to make sure during my lunch that I'm bringing my stress, like I'm choosing something easy. I'm going to a place I like to eat that doesn't require a lot of decisions. I'm going to sit there and maybe listen to music or let my brain just settle
Mm.
before I rush into picking my goal or the next thing on my plate. So I think it's an awareness of how many high intensity things can you handle. Most of the time I'm working with very high achieving clients who are very busy, who have an unstated belief that they can handle way more high intensity tasks than they physically can. So that's part of what I look at with them. They will say, well, I should be able to do, 10 things in a row, easy. Well, you can do that some days. And when your energy is really high, maybe you do that. Or when you have to do it, you do that. But can we chronically be doing that to ourselves? Or do we need to structure things in a more compassionate way towards our own brain and body, in a way where we're looking at our own well-being? Because yes, you can do a bunch of high intensity tasks in a row. How are you going to feel emotionally at the end of the day when you're done with those? Most of the time you're going to be feeling pretty low or feeling stressed out or grumpy, or you won't have any energy left for your family then.
Yeah. Have you got any advice on like staying focused and keeping our focus? Have you got any tips or strategies when, life throws unexpected curveballs, such as patchy internet, shall we say?
Well, this was a live example of that, right?
Exactly. When I think about like your working day, there's two types of workers. There's those that are employed, and then there's those who are self-employed. And I think focus can be an issue for both, because sometimes, like if you're working for somebody and you're doing long hours, then keeping your focus, especially if it's not so exciting, or even if it's like you're in that kind of office environment where you can't really take enough of those time buffer breaks that you're talking about. Yeah. And then on the other side of it, you've got those that work, maybe not even self-employed, but maybe working remotely, where you've got all the distractions from home. So I think focus for most is hard. What have you got to say about focus?
I like to compartmentalize my focus. So I think in both those scenarios, this can be a good thing to do. You look at the segment of time ahead. So I look at things in a block of time, let's say, 1 hour to 4 hours or whatever. I tend to see the day in blocks of time. An easy place to start with that, if you're new to it, is to maybe use meals as a way to block off your time, like, breakfast to lunch or lunch to end of day. And then you start to get intentional about what do I want to be doing with the next segment of time, and labeling it in your brain. So it becomes like I call it a time compartment. You visualize it like a box of time. What are you going to do with this box of time? And what are you going to call the box of time? So I could say, from now until 2:00, that's the email box of time. I'm just going to get through all my emails. I have hundreds of work emails. I'm going to go through them. Or that's when I'm going to work on this report. Or that's what I'm going to call grading hour, And I give things a label to make it more tangible, because time, where we get into trouble with it, is that it's amorphous and it sometimes feels either endless or you don't have enough of it. So the more we can make time markers in our brain and compartmentalize things, the more efficiently our brain can help us get things done. So when I say time marker, what I mean is you need to set the parameters for how long you're giving yourself to do something. Because if you don't do that, your brain can't map out the steps as effectively. Our brain is like a computer. It needs to know like the start and end times vaguely that it has to do something. So there was one neuroscience study I talk about in the book, where when they gave participants a start and end time and then a bunch of puzzles to do, they did the puzzles in a more effective way and finished more of the puzzles than the group. They just said, here's a bunch of puzzles. Whenever you're done is okay. Because the group that didn't know when the end time was, they just got lost. Their focus got so diffused. They thought they had endless time. And then suddenly it was the end of the time and they hadn't done any of the puzzle. I think that's my main tip, is we need to not put all this on our brain to do. We have to program some of it in. Like if your project doesn't have a set deadline, today, what piece of it are you going to get done? And what group of hours are you going to use to do that? And the more you can actively label that to yourself, the better the chances that you'll complete it. Now, sometimes we will still get lost in procrastinating things we don't want to do, but it helps us out a little bit more when our brain has some idea of, okay, I only have 2 hours to do this. Well, this will take this amount and this will take this amount. We can make better predictions. In other words,
I always feel like I always do that. And since at school, I'd be like the one that like writes the essay right before it's due for submission.
Yeah. You still wait till the last minute.
Yeah, but it must be. It's like the pressing deadline is where, because if it's that's not due for a couple of weeks, I kind of procrastinate because maybe it's not the most fun thing to do, so I put it off.
Yeah,
I can apply that to so many different things, in life.
Yeah, well, and that's a good example of when there is a time marker, you somehow manage to do it before the time marker. But if there's no time marker, that's the hard part.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if you're struggling, I think a lot of people, it's easy with, like, if your boss is telling you this is due Thursday, well, it's due Thursday. So you might procrastinate, but you'll get it done by Thursday. Right. But let's say it's something you want to do, like you're writing a story in your spare time, or you're working on a painting. Now it's a lot more amorphous. That's that problem of we know we could tell ourselves Friday, but is it really due Friday? No, I know I don't have to do it by Friday, so I'm just going to do it whenever I feel like it. Well, now we're in a really vague territory of we're going by feelings and a vague interpretation of time, which sometimes we have to do because we don't have energy to do it, but other times it will get procrastinated and pushed off down the line if we don't say to ourselves at some point, hey, no, let's do it on Friday. So one of the factors in my newest book, The Procrastination Playbook, is the support factor, accountability, developing some kind of accountability for yourself for those types of projects where there is an outside accountability. And this can look as simple as telling somebody, hey, on Friday, I have to write this article. I'm just going to tell you how much I did on Friday. Anybody who is a positive support can play this role for you. And you can do it for them. You can kind of sponsor each other's progress on things you're getting stuck at. Or you can track it for yourself. So I use a lot of different tracking systems in my own life. Like if I'm working on a book, it's often very amorphous. I don't have somebody saying, hey, I need this book by this date, because I often have to finish it before I can even get to that stage. Right. So I will keep track, like in an Excel sheet, how much am I doing every week? Because I want to hold myself accountable. And when I start to see my data add up, or sometimes people will mark an X on a calendar and you see a bunch of X's, then you get that dopamine boost of, I'm doing this. Okay, I want to keep going. I want to keep checking off the X's till I get to the end. And you've kind of tricked your brain into feeling like there's that pressure of time. And also you're getting a little boost of feeling done. Yeah. Because there is some accountability to yourself, at least then,
Yeah. Another part of the book I really appreciated reading, and I think this was very applicable to certainly our app users and a lot of the pod listeners, morning dread and the anti-motivating thoughts.
Oh my gosh. Morning is a hard time, isn't it? Morning, you wake up and we're often in a bad mood right from the get-go, or just unmotivated, or this feeling of it's all coming at me. I know right now it's Monday. Mondays are probably like the climax of that feeling of the whole week is ahead of me. You wake up feeling really unmotivated and tired before you've even gotten out of bed.
Yeah, perhaps a bit overwhelmed as well. So if you could recommend one technique that might help with that, what would you go for?
I'd say in the book that's coming out in February, I have something called the morning reset. And this is something I do. I like to reframe mornings as, okay, it's a clean slate. You can start each day as a beginner to the day. You don't have to bring in yesterday to today. It's like hitting a reset button. So you wake up, and I would say something gentle to myself to ease myself into the day. So again, we're talking to our brain in a gentle, soothing way, as though our brain is like a little kid who doesn't want to get out of bed. What can you say to it in a gentle way to bring it into the day? And then we gently ease our body into the day. So it has two parts: do something kind to ease your brain into the day. Say something kind to yourself, like, good job, just take it one step at a time. Let's move slowly, or I'm figuring it out, or I'll get to that in a second. And then the second part is do something gentle to ease your body into the day. I know when I had my kids were really young, I describe it in the book as springing out of bed in like firefighter mode. Like my kid would be crying, you wake up and you have a million things to do. You got to get everyone out, out, out. And I was like, my stress would shoot up. We're talking about that stress scale. I would come out of bed into consciousness at level 10 stress because my kids needed stuff. I had to get everybody to school. So I think the older I get, the more I realize I can't do that to my body. It just sets me up for a terrible morning where I'm already at level 10. Yeah. My adrenaline is going so high. I'm thinking a million, very harsh thoughts about the day ahead. I need to go super gentle, slow down in the morning, like move your body slowly, let yourself come into consciousness in a gentle way, like be kind to your body. It's a hard time for your body. We automatically get a rush of cortisol called the cortisol awakening response. That happens the second you wake up, which is a primitive thing our brain does to like prepare us for danger. So to counter that, we just have to go slower on purpose. And whatever that means to you, it's different for every person. But I know lots of very successful people who have learned to go gentle in the morning and not look at their phone first thing. Say something like, I'm going to get a cup of coffee and sit there for a few minutes and take it all in before I look at my phone or my emails. Or I'm not even going to check my emails until my body's moved around for like a half hour and I'm going and I'm connected to what's happening. So I guess it's like a slow down on purpose, and also embracing you can start over every day. You don't have to start where you ended the day. You can reset and say, it's a new day. I have no idea what this day will bring. I don't have to negatively predict a lot is coming at me before the day has even started.
Right. I think something that also might be applicable here, and something else I learned from your book, is you talk about just the facts. So when something really annoys you, or it could be a couple of things that are in a short space of time of each other, but it just puts you in the worst mood. Like you're, queuing, and it's like the queue's not there, it's going to make you late, and it's the domino, and then you start future predicting.
Right.
So you almost put the brakes on that by saying, just the facts. Like, what are just the facts? And it's like, you're observing, aren't you? I'm noticing that I'm like getting worried and anxious about how long this line is taking. Yeah.
It's almost like going into the scientific observer part of your brain rather than the flooded with emotion part of your brain. So oftentimes you can't get to the positive place, right? Like you're just feeling the stress of the day. You're noticing you're in line and you're frustrated. You're late somewhere. We can't just automatically think a happy thought. Like, I'm so grateful for that. We can't go there. Our brain it'll just say, no, I'm going to argue with you. No, this is the worst. I hate this. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like to neutralize, just neutral, just aim for neutral, not happy, just neutral. So neutral would be, I'm standing in this line. It's very long right now, but I'm sure we'll get to the end of it soon. Or I'm sure I'll figure it out one step at a time. Once I get to the front, I'll figure out what the next step is. So we kind of don't argue with our brain. We don't say, you should be really grateful about standing in this line. You should think of something else, because our brain will want to resist. It'll want to push back. We just say, what are the facts? Like the other day I was helping, my kid needed a bookshelf built for his room, and I was getting really frustrated. I was really tired. I don't like assembling furniture anyway. And I had to pull back and say, one step at a time. I figured this out before. I've built other things before. I will figure it out again. I'm sure if I just slow down and maybe just build one side and then take a break, I'll feel a little bit better. So I kind of just talk to myself. Like I said, like you talk to your own brain like it's a little kid, and you kind of soothe it, calm it down, notice what's happening. Don't ignore the fact something is happening. But then, how can you soothe it forward a little bit?
I thought your section as well on decision fatigue and overcoming paralysis was
Oh yeah, that happens to us all.
that spoke to me as well. Could you talk a little bit about decision fatigue?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we're living in a time where we have access to so many things. I find so many clients are getting stuck making decisions, and sometimes they're about decisions for things they really want to do, like a vacation or buying something or whatever. And they just get stuck making any decision. It's a form of procrastination, really, because you just get stuck there and you don't move forward. And then you beat yourself up about not moving forward, and it just goes on and on. So I think when you're catching yourself getting stuck on decision fatigue, first of all, your stress is probably really high. So again, making a decision, that goes back to our executive functions. If you're really struggling to make a decision, you might just be jammed up with stress. So my first technique is always bring the stress down, step away from it, actively bring your stress down. And then you can turn those logical skills back on where we can sort through the pros and cons. But if you're really jammed up and overwhelmed, you cannot make a pros cons list because you'll just overwhelm yourself even more. The second thing is, sometimes it's a sneaky form of perfectionism where we think we have to make the perfect decision and we think we cannot undo it later. Like, I have to choose the right bag to order right now because then I'll be stuck with this bag for the rest of time. And that's why I haven't ordered this new luggage or something like that. So it's looking at, is there a good enough zone for this? So I call it the good enough zone. Like, what is our intention with ordering this thing? Is there a good enough thing that it just has to qualify, right, to meet? And after that, will it be okay? Like, if something goes terribly wrong with it, can you fix the decision later? Most of the time, yes. Most of the time, you order the wrong thing, you send it back, or you work with what you've got, and then you move on to the next decision. You have more clarity. But the being stuck is the worst part because we only have so much data to pick from. We just have to make the good enough decision. Then we get more data and we refine the decision. So it's kind of reminding yourself, you do have the ability to make decisions. Your confidence is feeling low right now because your stress is very high. But if you can remind yourself, I have made lots of little decisions before. I will continue to do so again. It will be okay. I can alter course as I see fit, down the line. That's when it usually turns back on for somebody that they can do it.
Just because my background is in music and radio, I loved your suggestion of how we can use music as a tool for productivity, such as getting us through the more mundane tasks, even such as cleaning your apartment or your house.
I know.
Maybe there's
it's
a playlist,
amazing.
like a specific genre that is like
inspiring to you.
Yeah. Inspiring, but also it's a signal. Oh, it's right now. It's time to clean because Gabby's listening to reggae, for example.
Yeah. Exactly. I do exactly this. It seems like a silly tool, but music is so powerful. I think it's so cool. You like music and you want to use it as a tool. And we already do it at the gym when we're working out. We instinctively know, like, if I want to get pumped up to go on the exercise bike, like, I have to play fast-paced, exciting, happy music. My point is, why aren't we doing this for more things? It works so well. Music is like this portal into different parts of your brain to access different emotions. You can use it like a brain hack to turn on your focus. So when I sit down to write, I'm often unmotivated. As you know, most writers and artists, we love to do the art, but then we fight ourselves. Like, we just won't start doing it. Most writers will procrastinate writing. That's like 90% of what they're doing. So I've learned a trick where I have a writing playlist. I play upbeat, happy music. And I've been using it for so long now that when I put on my headphones and play the music, my brain, it's a behavioral association I've made. It zaps me into like, okay, time to write. I better start writing. And otherwise, if I don't play the music, I may drift off into not feeling motivated for very many hours, staring at a blank page, and my focus won't always turn on. It's the same when you put on your playlist for going for a run. Somehow you've made that association. Okay, it's my workout playlist. My body knows it's time to move. And they've done studies with Olympic athletes famous Olympic athletes get themselves in the mood to compete in the Olympics by playing the same playlist over and over again. And often it's kind of funny, cheesy songs that you wouldn't think these serious athletes listen to. They're listening to Taylor Swift or someone like that who gets them excited to run in the Olympics. So you can do this with tasks. You can do this with like the dishes, laundry, whatever anthem you want to make for yourself. Why not use something easy that all of us have access to, but in a deliberate, intentional way, in a repetitive way.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so in terms of then, if we're looking at goal setting and time management and combating procrastination, staying motivated, I've got to ask you one question on that. It's not easy, is it? Like,
no,
when you're really in something as well, it's like, for example, a tax return.
Yeah, how do we do that? That one is hard.
Yeah, like, have you got any suggestions there?
It depends on the task. So for something that's like universally probably not fun for most of us, like doing taxes, I mean, it's hard to make that fun. Really. Some other things you could make fun with music, or, a lot of people use timers. They say, I'm going to put a timer on for 15 minutes. And I can do anything for 15 minutes. I'm not sure taxes would work for that, because you get really lost in the weeds with it and you just got to get through it.
Yeah.
So for stuff that is super hard for my own brain that I rate as a high intensity task, like doing taxes, I use rewards. I give myself a reward for completing it. And that doesn't have to be a thing you spend a lot of money on. It doesn't have to be like, I take myself to the spa. Everybody always says stuff like that. It could be something really simple. You can use delayed gratification. So like if I have a Netflix show I'm really excited about, I will say, you are not allowed to watch that until you do your taxes. And then you can binge watch all night long. And I use delayed gratification. Sometimes if it's something really big, I will take myself out. I'll treat myself out to my favorite restaurant or go to the spa or whatever. So depending on how big the task, that should be how much fun the reward is, right? If it's a super unfun task, I make it a super fun reward. And if it's just a little task, like I have 3 loads of laundry I have to finish, I just make it a little tiny reward for myself. And sometimes that reward is just, I give myself free time, like where I can watch my show or read a book or whatever, and I label it as reward time. So I actually let myself enjoy it, which we don't do enough in our culture. No. We don't give ourselves space to just say, I'm watching my show and that's all I'm doing. And it's okay, because this is my time to be like, I'm done. I did all the things today and I'm done. And that's so important for your brain to feel like there are times during your day where it's done. It doesn't have anything else to do, and you're giving it permission.
Yeah, I think we always fall into the trap of thinking that from the moment we wake up till the moment we close our eyes at night, everything has to be programmed
productive.
Productive. Yeah. And then that can often have the reverse effect, can't it? And then you lose focus. You procrastinate.
We're not robots, we're designed to be human, not robot. I don't know where this comes from in our culture. I know here in America, we have that very intense hustle culture where it's like, you're lazy, you're taking a break, you're lazy. And it's so toxic. It's not good for us. It's not how we're designed as humans. We're designed to relax, to play, to be silly, to experiment, to do other things other than work. And I think if you make all those things as important as work, you start to get more balanced where you're not procrastinating as much, because our brain doesn't like that feeling where it's all work and no play. It's all work and no rest. It will be a rebel and say, no, in that case, I'm just not going to work. I'm not going to do anything you want me to do today, right? It'll go on strike. So we need to take what it needs into consideration more regularly, give it little doses of what it wants more, and then it'll be your friend. It'll help you focus when you need to focus more.
Yeah. I love that. Such great advice. I mean, and for plenty more suggestions, the Ultimate Time Management Toolkit is available wherever
Yeah.
people get
Yeah.
their books from. And then the one in the pipeline, the next one is the procrastination playbook. That's coming out really
Right.
soon, right? Is that like
Yeah, November
November?
21st. It's published through Jessica Kingsley Books, which is based in London, but you can get the book worldwide. It'll be in stores worldwide November 21st. You can also find all my books at risawilliams.com. I have links to all of them there. I have a new one next year, Get Stuff Done Without the Stress, which is all my most popular time management tools in one book. So that might be a good place for people to start next March.
Yeah, we'll add the website and your Instagram as well. Do you want me to point?
Oh, I'd love you guys to follow me on Instagram at Risa Williams Therapy. I give tons of books away for free. You can find my podcast episodes with time management tools at Risa Williams Therapy. And I'd love to, if any of you read the book and like any of the tools, please feel free to reach out to me. You know, authors love to hear from people. We so often don't hear from people. So please reach out.
Podcasters
if you like this stuff.
Too.
Podcasters, it's like you're throwing stuff out into a void and you don't know who's actually listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I can't let you go before we do the Happier Life Project's last 5 in 5. They're like quick fire questions.
All right.
The same 5 questions I ask every guest to conclude the episode.
Okay.
When and where are you at your happiest?
I am at my happiest, I think, when I'm just at home with my kids and my husband, but just letting myself be calm and letting myself be in the moment. I guess in the moment is where you find your happiness, in the present moment.
What's your favorite thing to do that nourishes your mental health?
Right now, my favorite thing to do, I'm using a breathwork app called Othership. I like breathwork. That's where you're like breathing along with music and someone else breathing, which I know sounds strange, but it actually relaxes me a lot. And I also like to go for a daily walk. I find daily walks are just so great. They're free and they bring your stress down so much. Yeah. And people since the beginning of time have been writing about daily walks are great. Daily walks are the best medicine.
Yeah.
I guess I finally have embraced that like I need to go for a daily walk every day. It's non-negotiable. Like I just have to go. Yeah. Now I sort of crave it, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you there. What piece of advice do you now know that you wished somebody would have told you earlier that would have made you a happier person?
Happiness to me has changed over the years. I think we're sold as a society that if you do enough things and you buy enough things, you will reach eternal happiness. Happiness is just a temporary state like all your other emotions. And we can feel it in tiny little blips throughout the day if we want to. Mm-hmm. It's just redefining what happy is to you so that it encompasses more emotions. I think if I had learned that earlier, it would have made me a lot happier. Like to think, I'm calm right now. That can be happy. I feel cozy right now, sitting on the couch with my cat. That can be happy. I think my definition of happiness when I was younger was so extreme, and it was like this thing I had to reach. And you can practice it in tiny little blips every day. If you look for it, you'll find them more. And if you let your definition not be as rigid, be a little more flexible with what you define as a happy feeling, you will connect with it all the time. And it's that easy. Just change your definition of what it means to calm, peaceful, relaxing, done, whatever the word is that you can associate that lets you feel it more will help you.
I love that. What is the most important one thing that needs to change to make the world a happier place?
I would say right now, if I could teach everybody just to acknowledge that they are stressed out and just really acknowledge it and to look at themselves with more kindness, treat their own brain and body with more kindness, I feel like we could all treat each other with more kindness as a result. Until we can bring our own stress down and learn how to regulate it, we can't really be there for other people to help people out. You know, we have to replenish ourselves and take care of ourselves so that we can get better at helping the people around us regulate and take care of themselves too. So I wish for stress regulation tools for the world right now. Just acknowledge you are stressed, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and you will in turn be kinder to others as well.
Okay, final question. What is a simple, actionable first step we can take when it comes to bettering our time management that will help us on our journey to building a happier life?
So every day, just slow down, check in with your body more. Ask your body, what do you need? What do you need right now? Do you need rest? Do you need more fun? Do you need more playtime? What do you need, brain and body, to feel happier, to feel more balanced? And then really honoring what you're hearing. Like, don't just blow through it and say, yeah, you'll get a break sometime. Okay, you need a break? Let's take a break. Let's see how that feels when I listen to what my brain and body are telling me regularly. Like, you can't do anything without them. We need your brain and body on board. So we need to develop that relationship, make it a healthier, kinder relationship that you're having on a daily basis.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate everything you're doing with your podcast. This is such important work, and thank you as well.
Gabby, back with you. Thank you so much to Risa Williams for donating her time and sharing such valuable insights with us. And thank you for using some of your time to listen to this episode of the Happier Life Project podcast. I hope you found it helpful, and remember, managing your time well isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Just one more minute of your time, please, for the important housekeeping before I say farewell. If you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. Those of you who are listening on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. If you are in crisis or you think you may have an emergency, please do call your doctor or the emergency services immediately. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the interviewer, which is me, and the interviewees. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as a substitute for professional or medical advice. Our partners at the Priory Healthcare are not involved in the production or content of this podcast. If you are listening on one of the podcast platforms and you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who you think could benefit. And to find and follow us on social media, we are at My Possible Self, and I've been at Radio Gabby. Do take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.